They buried you like a problem and moved on like it was solved. Now they're losing sleep because the problem walks, breathes, and remembers. My dear chosen ones, welcome back. Try not to smirk too hard. They already feel it. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The ones who wrote you off like a bad investment. The ones who clinked glasses over your supposed downfall. The ones who said, they're done, they're finished, they'll never matter. Cute. Now look at them, checking your page in secret, stalking your progress from burner accounts, replaying old conversations in their head like crime scene footage. They thought they closed your chapter, and instead they accidentally published your origin story. Here's the idiom they're choking on right now. The tables didn't just turn, my chosen ones. They flipped clean off the floor. Someone high up just connected 3 dots about you, and now you're living rent-free in the minds of people who swore you'd never make it past the first act. They're not laughing anymore. They're studying. They're rattled. They're trying to figure out how the nobody they counted out became the variable they now have to factor in. You felt the shift, didn't you? That strange heaviness in the air lately. That tiny pause in conversation when you walk into a room. That quiet awareness in people's eyes, like they know something about you that you haven't fully admitted to yourself. You're not imagining it. When you're chosen, the atmosphere catches it before you do. Energy moves first, then information, then behavior. That's why old enemies are suddenly silent. That's why certain people who used to talk down to you now talk around you. That's why you sense a change but can't quite name it yet. You might be asking, if I'm so chosen, why did I go through so much? Because, my dear chosen one, they thought they were breaking you when they were actually blueprinting you. They tried to slam the door in your face, not realizing you were the kind of person who learns the layout of the building while you're locked outside. You weren't just surviving those nights, you were downloading instructions. While they were busy running their mouths, you were quietly updating your system. And here's what hits them like a slap they never saw coming. When they declared you finished, you didn't argue. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't go on a campaign to prove them wrong. You just went quiet and kept moving. That silence, that was your nuclear weapon. They expected tantrums, breakdowns, long paragraphs, and public meltdowns. Instead, you gave them nothing. You left them yelling into an empty hallway. That's why they're embarrassed now. That's why their ego is swallowed whole. You didn't give them a scene. You gave them results. Someone high up noticed that. Call it a decision maker, a gatekeeper, a strategist, a person with reach, or just the algorithm of life finally doing its job, whatever label makes sense to you. The point is, someone with vision looked at your timeline and froze. They saw the fall that should have destroyed you. Dot 1. They saw the way your presence started showing up in rooms you'd never stepped into. Dot 2. They saw the way you stopped begging for approval and started moving like your own green light. Dot 3. And once those 3 dots connected, you stopped being just another person. You became a pattern, a problem, and a prophecy all at once. And I know there's a part of you wondering, is this really me, or am I just hyping myself up? Let's drag that doubt into the light. If you weren't chosen, why didn't you stay where they left you? If you weren't different, why did every attempt to break you only make you sharper? If you weren't on some kind of trajectory, why are people who never checked for you now suddenly aware of your existence? Coincidence doesn't stay this consistent. At some point, you have to admit it. You're not the extra in their story. You're the plot twist they didn't prepare for. My dear chosen ones, this isn't about arrogance. This is about accuracy. There is power in finally seeing yourself clearly after years of being misread. They called you weak while you were incubating. They called you lost while you were loading. They called you finished while you were just switching forms. That's why they're obsessed now. Not because you begged them to look your way, but because everything about you now contradicts the script they wrote. Before we move any further, chosen ones, lock in with us for a moment. If this message is hitting you in the chest, the way truth always does, show your support. Hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep pouring this level of powerful, energizing, mind-shifting content straight into your world. Every tap, every sub, every bit of engagement tells us, yes, keep going, keep speaking, keep delivering what wakes people up. Your support isn't just for the channel. It fuels the creation of messages that sharpen you, elevate you, and remind you exactly who you are becoming. Let's rise together. So here's your move. If you feel that pull in your chest right now, that weird little "this is about me" sensation, don't scroll past it. That's not hype, that's recognition. Lock in with me. Drop a 777 in the comments, not as superstition, but as a quiet signal that you know what's happening and you're done pretending you don't. Tap the like button, hit subscribe, and strap in. Not for me, for you. As a way of saying, yeah, I see the dots. I feel the shift. I'm ready to walk like the chosen one I already am. Because from here on out, we're not playing small to make anybody comfortable. We're unpacking exactly why those 3 dots about you changed everything, and why the people who once laughed at your story are now forced to study your rise. Chosen ones, before we press deeper into this unraveling, pause with me for a moment. If this message is hitting your instincts the way a revelation always does, show your support so we can keep creating the kind of content that shakes you awake and reminds you why someone high up just connected those 3 dots about you. Tap that like button, subscribe, and drop a 77 in the comments if you're ready to stand fully inside the power they never expected you to claim. Your support keeps this energy alive, keeps this truth flowing, and keeps us bringing you the fuel you were meant to grow from. And now, let's move step by step into why their obsession with you isn't random, it's recognition. If you're truly the chosen one, you'll feel every word unfold like something you've lived before. Let's get started. Number 1. The moment you outlived the ending they wrote for you, the day their script fell apart and you walked off page. They tried to write you out of the story, my dear chosen ones, and now they're forced to watch the sequel they never approved. My chosen ones, let's drag this truth into the light with no mercy. The first dot they connected about you was born the moment their predictions about your downfall aged like spoiled milk. They rehearsed your ending like it was guaranteed. They spoke about you in past tense while you were still very much breathing. They whispered that you were finished, that you were broken, that your story was over. And now they have to live with the embarrassment of being proven wrong by the one person they underestimated the most. You. And before you ask, why does this moment matter so much? Hear me clearly. Because the second you refused to die in the role they assigned you, the entire narrative shifted in your favor. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't some random fluke in the system. It was the moment your strength quietly announced, "I'm not done." And that whisper traveled farther than you'll ever know. My dear chosen ones, here's a quote for the ones who tried to bury you. They dug your grave too early, and now they're terrified of the creature they accidentally helped create. Because when they buried you, they forgot something crucial. Pressure doesn't kill chosen ones. It compresses them into something unrecognizable, something sharper, something that can't be handled with bare hands. They mistook your silence for defeat, not realizing silence is a weapon only the powerful know how to wield. They thought the darkness would swallow you whole, not knowing darkness is where chosen ones learn to see without light. You might wonder, but why did I have to go through all that damage? Because, chosen one, if you hadn't walked through the wreckage they left behind, you'd never have developed the instincts you carry now, the instincts that make you unreadable, unbreakable, untouchable. The instincts that made someone high up freeze, rewind your timeline and say, hold on, how did this one slip past the collapse that kills everyone else? That's what rattled them, not your survival, your mutation. You didn't crawl out of the rubble looking the same. You didn't limp back into the storyline like a wounded extra. You rose with a stare they'd never seen, a walk they couldn't decipher, a quietness that wasn't fear but calculation. You changed direction with no announcement. You rebuilt your identity without permission. You outgrew them without saying goodbye. And that's when the powerful realized the truth. You weren't the character they dismissed. You were the anomaly forming right under their nose. Let me speak directly to you, chosen one. Remember that moment you thought you broke? When you were sitting alone replaying everything? When betrayal hit so deep you could barely breathe? When someone tossed you aside like you were disposable, you questioned your worth. You questioned your purpose. You questioned whether anyone saw your pain. But someone did. Someone with reach. Someone trained to decode patterns. Someone who doesn't look at emotions. They look at outcomes, and your outcome didn't match your circumstances. They expected disaster, but you built discipline. They expected collapse, but you built clarity. They expected you to fade, but you sharpened. That's when the first dot lit up. Not because you won, not because you succeeded, but because you refused to stay dead in a story that wasn't yours. Do you understand how rare that is? Most people stay stuck where they fell. They turn their pain into a museum they never leave. But you, my chosen one, you treated pain like a drill sergeant. Every setback trained something new in you. Every heartbreak carved your instincts deeper. Every loss forced you to grow in angles they never saw coming. You didn't just survive, you evolved. And evolution, chosen one, is what terrifies them, because now someone high up is looking at your timeline with a question they can't answer. How did this one slip past every single trap that should have ended them? You want another quote to send a chill through your doubters. They counted you out because they couldn't count that high. Now look at you, strategic, steady, silent, focused, moving like someone who already knows the ending because you've lived enough beginnings to know the pattern. And that calmness, that unshakable presence, that refusal to repeat old mistakes, that's how they knew you weren't recovering. You were ascending. They miscalculated you so badly that they're still trying to rewrite their notes. They checked off broken, and you came back refined. They labeled you done, and you responded with a new chapter. They assumed you'd stay down, and instead you walked out of the ruin with a blueprint they didn't know you stole. My dear chosen ones, this is why someone in a high place whispered, "Watch this one, they're not finished." Dot one was the moment they realized you weren't a survivor. You were a rising threat disguised as a setback. And this, right here, is the beginning of your legend. Number 2. When your name walked into rooms, your body never entered. When your name walked in long before you did. They locked the door on you, chosen one, and now they're panicking because somehow your shadow is already sitting at the table. My dear chosen ones, welcome to the moment their confusion turns into fear. Dot 1 was about your refusal to die in the story they wrote. Dot 2? This is where things get humiliating for them, because this isn't about survival anymore. This is about presence, influence, range, the kind of impact that travels faster than footsteps, faster than intention, faster than any gate they tried to shut in your face. They wanted you out of the room, yet your name walked in like royalty. And nothing hits an enemy harder than realizing they underestimated your reach. Let me hit you with a quote that slices right through their pride. They tried to erase you, but the silence they left behind kept spelling your name. They thought keeping you out of conversations would keep you irrelevant. They thought excluding you would shrink you. They thought hiding your value would make it disappear. But presence doesn't shrink just because someone hopes it will. And you, my chosen one, have a presence that refuses to wait for introductions. You started appearing in spaces that weren't designed for you, not because you barged in, but because your energy simply didn't recognize the locks. Picture this: a table full of people strategizing, gossiping, mapping out futures that were never meant to include you. They're laughing, plotting, moving pieces, and then your name comes up softly, unexpectedly, and not as a joke this time. Someone leans forward and says, "Have you noticed what they're doing?" Another squints and replies, "Yeah, who is that?" And suddenly the room shifts. Your presence enters without your permission because your frequency traveled ahead of you. That's dot 2, when your influence stops waiting for your body to catch up. Enemies hate this phase with their whole being. They spent years trying to dim you, minimize you, silence you. They tried keeping your impact contained, like stuffing a storm into a shoebox. But now, your words echo 3 days after you speak. Your ideas sprout in conversations you've never heard. Your energy shows up in rooms your feet never touched. You became the topic without ever entering the chat, and the part that destroys their ego. You're not even trying. My chosen ones, hear this clearly. Effortless influence scares people more than forced power ever could. You didn't network, you didn't beg for attention, you didn't push your way into circles that didn't value you. You simply existed at full capacity, and the world adjusted its orbit around you. It's like you're standing still, yet somehow everything is tilting toward you. People feel pulled by your presence the same way metal feels pulled by a magnet. Not because you're chasing, but because you're aligned. Someone high up noticed that alignment. They saw you appear in conversations that require privilege most people never access. They saw your energy unlock doors like it had a key card built into its signature. They saw the panic ripple through the ones who swore you'd never matter. They saw the confusion on your enemies' faces as they ask questions they don't dare say aloud. How are they everywhere? How did we miss this? Why is their name spreading like static on a frequency we can't block? And the watchers, the analyzers, the observers, the decision makers, they're not confused. They're intrigued. Because people like you are rare. You're a pattern breaker, a rule bender, an outlier, someone who shouldn't have reach but does, someone who grows even when no one waters them, someone who gains influence without lifting a finger. Imagine your presence like a radio signal. It was supposed to stay local, only heard in your little corner of the world. Yet somehow it's bouncing off satellites, being picked up by people who weren't even looking for you. That's how strong your frequency is. It refuses to stay small. This is where your enemies taste humiliation. They tried to blacklist you, yet people who never met you quote you. They tried to erase you, yet strangers reference your voice. They tried to dismiss you, yet now their entire plan is being rewritten around your existence. You became an unexpected variable in their system, a glitch the algorithm didn't know how to handle. Let me answer the questions rising in your mind right now. Why is this happening? Why do people feel my presence before I show up? Why does it feel like eyes are on me even when I'm silent? Because evolution has phases, and you just entered the one where your energy steps into rooms before your body does. When your name becomes a whisper in circles you've never walked in. When your presence becomes a ripple that touches places you didn't aim for. That's when powerful people start circling your name like it's an opportunity or a threat. Dot 2 isn't about being included in the room. It's about being unavoidable. Your enemies aren't asking if you matter, they're asking if they noticed you too late. And chosen one, that question alone is enough to keep them awake at night. Number 3. The day your silence became the one force. They couldn't manipulate. The moment your silence became the one thing they couldn't manipulate. The third dot, my chosen ones, wasn't marked by noise, revenge, or dramatic exits. It was marked by the kind of silence that makes entire systems glitch. And before we go any further, let me make this very clear. Nothing unravels a structure faster than a person who no longer performs for its approval. That's exactly what you did. You reached a point where explaining yourself felt like dragging your soul across concrete for people who never deserved access in the first place. And instead of begging to be understood, instead of shrinking to fit their expectations, instead of softening your edges to make others comfortable, you simply stopped. No announcement, no emotional speech, no goodbye tour. Just a quiet internal click that said, "I'm not asking for permission to exist anymore." That single click echoed louder than every argument you ever walked away from. It shook people who were used to monitoring you, predicting you, categorizing you. Suddenly, the version of you they rehearsed responding to no longer existed. You became unreadable. And let me tell you something, chosen ones, unreadable people terrify predictable systems. When they can't decode you, they can't control you. When they can't poke you into reacting, they lose their power. When your silence stops being submissive and starts being sovereign, the entire dynamic flips. Picture it. People who used to feed off your reactions now standing there with empty hands, starving. They poke, expecting an emotional spill. Nothing. They question you, hoping you'll justify yourself. You don't. They try to bait you into old cycles, believing muscle memory will pull you back. You stay still. You don't step into the trap. You don't return to the script. You don't orbit around their opinions anymore. Your silence became a locked door, and the key they once used no longer fits the lock. Someone high up saw that shift. Someone observant, strategic, analytical, because silence like yours isn't avoidance, it's evolution. It's not carelessness, it's clarity. You stopped seeking validation because you finally understood how expensive that currency was. Approval had been the last chain on your ankle, and when you snapped it, the watchers in the metaphorical upper floors leaned forward in their chairs. That's when they whispered, "We just lost control of this one." Not because you rebelled loudly, but because you didn't need anything from them anymore. Not praise, not recognition, not permission. And I know the question forming in your mind right now. Why does not caring hit this hard? Why does detachment shake people more than confrontation? My chosen one, this is the truth nobody teaches you. Approval is a system's strongest leash. It keeps people predictable. It keeps them bending, apologizing, performing. The moment you stop chasing it, you become uncontainable. You become the glitch they didn't program for. You become the variable that destabilizes their emotional math. Systems can study anger, resistance, rebellion, but indifference, that's uncharted territory. You became a ghost in their expectations. Every behavior they once mapped out turned irrelevant. Every trigger they counted on disappeared. Every emotional script they assumed you would follow suddenly erased itself. You were no longer motivated by guilt, shame, belonging, or the need to be liked. You walked clean out of the psychological cage they didn't want you to notice you were in. And the silence you carried out with you? It registered like an earthquake. Quiet, but impossible to ignore. Soft, but devastating in impact. Your silence said everything they feared hearing. I don't need your applause to know my worth. I don't need your agreement to move forward. I don't need your approval to exist. And when a chosen one reaches that level of inner authority, the world around them adjusts. Some people pull back, unsure how to interact with the new version of you. Some grow intimidated because they can no longer manipulate your emotions. And a few, those who watch from higher vantage points, take note, because detachment at this level signals mastery. It signals evolution. It signals someone who is no longer a participant in the game, but a force capable of rewriting the rules. That is dot 3. The moment your silence stopped being permission and started being power. Number 4, the pattern in you that redrew their entire map. The triangle that keeps them up at night. Some people walk through life leaving footprints in soft soil, easy to overlook, easy to erase. But you, my dear chosen ones, didn't leave footprints. You left a blueprint, cold, geometric, impossible to misinterpret. A blueprint for disruption, for unpredictability, for the kind of shift they can feel under their feet long before they understand its source. Dot 4 isn't here to be poetic or gentle. It's the moment the silent watcher in the high tower, the one who studies patterns for a living, stopped pretending you were just another name passing through their system. It's the moment they realized that something about you refuses to stay flat, refuses to stay linear, refuses to stay label-friendly. Because when they connected the 3 dots the world carved on your timeline, survival that hardened into evolution, presence that traveled farther than your body ever did, and detachment that proved you'd mastered yourself, not the crowd, they didn't get a person, they got a shape, a formation, a warning signal disguised as symmetry. They got a triangle, sharp, defined, precise, unavoidable. Imagine this. Chosen ones, somewhere far above your awareness, a strategist sits alone in a dim room lit only by the glow of screens. They're reviewing timelines, analyzing behavioral arcs, scrolling through patterns that usually reveal everything about a person. But tonight, something catches them off guard. On 3 separate monitors, your data aligns with eerie accuracy, 3 dots forming one unmistakable shape. Not random, not accidental, not explainable by anything they've seen before. A triangle. And suddenly their composure fractures, because that shape doesn't fit any category they've spent their career mastering. It doesn't match the rise of a typical leader, the rebellion of a misfit, or the desperation of someone clawing for relevance. They try to label you, victim, underdog, follower, anomaly. But the lines refuse to stay still. They shift, they straighten, they correct. And every correction points toward a different conclusion. You're not a chapter in their manual. You're the glitch that rewrites the manual entirely. That's when the pacing starts. Because people like you, chosen ones, don't show up often. Most people break under pressure. You didn't break, you evolved. Most people dim their energy when ignored. You spread without stepping foot into a room. Most people detach to protect themselves. You detached and somehow grew more powerful. These traits don't add up. These traits don't occur in the same person. And when they do, they create something unstable, uncontainable, revolutionary. Your evolution rattles the system because it doesn't follow the formula. It doesn't step obediently through predictable arcs. It leaps, it mutates. It arrives fully formed in ways logic can't track. That's why the watchers are whispering questions behind closed doors, questions that reveal their rising fear. Are you an asset or a threat? Should you be supported or monitored? Will you be the spark that lights a movement or the blade that cuts through the old order? They hate that they can't answer any of it. You're too raw, too recently transformed, too unpredictable. You're still becoming, and nothing terrifies systems more than someone mid-evolution, because they can't prepare for a final form they've never seen before. But let me tell you the part that shakes them the hardest, my chosen ones. You're neither asset nor threat. Those labels belong to people who can be categorized, who operate inside the boundaries they were given. You, on the other hand, create new boundaries just by stepping into the room. You're the stone thrown into the pond, not to sink, not to float, but to permanently rearrange the shape of the waterline. Catalysts don't fit in systems. Catalysts change systems. and systems fear what they cannot control. So now the Watchers sit with that triangle etched into their minds, a sharp symbol reminding them that something massive is forming in your shadow. Something they didn't predict, something they didn't authorize, something they can't stop. And no matter how many theories they try to build around you, no matter how many labels they attempt to pin onto your energy, the truth remains simple and unavoidable. That triangle is not a warning sign for you. It's a warning sign for them, and they know it. Number 5. The power you wield without lifting a finger. The power they're terrified to put into words. The 5th dot they connected about you, my chosen ones, is the one that makes their hands shake the worst. It's the one they dance around in meetings, the one they refuse to label out loud because giving something a name gives it shape, and your shape breaks their framework. They don't know how to categorize you because every category they've ever built collapses the moment your presence enters the room. Not because you're loud, not because you're performing, not because you're pushing for dominance. No, your power is quieter, colder, sharper. It's the kind of power that doesn't ask for space. It simply rearranges the room until space forms around you. The part chewing through their nerves is simple. You're not trying. You're not clawing for power. You're not orchestrating schemes. You're not collecting allies like trading cards. You're not even interested in competing. Competitors can be tracked. Schemes can be decoded. Ambition can be manipulated. But you're a threat because you moved past all that. You're just existing, yet your existence shifts the entire atmosphere. You walk in and the chairs scrape, the air thickens, conversations lean, and they have no blueprint for handling someone whose very presence creates a gravitational pull. My dear chosen ones, this is the nightmare scenario for people who rely on control. A person who isn't playing the game, yet keeps winning without lifting a single weapon. They expected rebels with slogans, loud disruptors with agendas, predictable firebrands trying to tear systems down. They prepared for those, but they never prepared for someone like you, a natural-born anomaly who bends the environment by simply being present. A person who can destabilize the dynamic without raising a voice. A phenomenon who can change the storyline without touching the script. They saw you survive disasters that should have erased your trajectory, events that would have broken the bones of ordinary lives, collapses that should have sent you spiraling into obscurity. But you didn't just stand up again, you stood up differently. They searched for patterns in your decisions and found none that fit the typical arcs. They tried predicting your next move and realized your growth doesn't follow linear logic. It jumps, it mutates, it evolves like it's guided by something internal, something unwavering, something they can't influence. Then came the moment that truly made them afraid. You detached. You stopped performing for approval. You stopped bending yourself into forms that pleased others. You stopped trying to defend your worth or explain your choices. You simply stepped out of their psychological perimeter. That's when the leash snapped. And a chosen one without a leash is the kind of variable that sends entire systems into silent panic. You stopped caring about being understood, and in doing so, you became unreadable. You stopped chasing applause, and in doing so, you became uncontrollable. You stopped needing validation, and in doing so, you became unfollowable. Because the moment someone no longer wants anything from those in power lose all leverage. Imagine them sitting around a table with your name glowing on a screen, trying to build a model that predicts your next move. Imagine their frustration when every simulation crashes. Imagine their unease when they realize none of the usual manipulation tactics work on you anymore. They can't lure you. They can't guilt you. They can't shame you. They can't tempt you. You outgrew the hooks, and they have nothing left to grab onto. This is the power they can't define, the power of a chosen one who moves from internal certainty instead of external permission. A person who doesn't need acceptance to operate. A person who doesn't need applause to keep advancing. A person who doesn't bend at the sight of disapproval. You're the glitch they can't monetize, the outlier they can't replicate, the masterpiece they can't claim ownership over. And now they're stuck. Should they fear you, study you, recruit you, or step out of the way before you rewrite everything they thought was stable? They don't know. They're hesitant, unsettled, off balance, because your ascent is happening with or without their acknowledgement, and every step you take threatens to erase the old order entirely. That, my dear chosen ones, is the fifth dot, and that is why they're terrified. You're not chasing power. You are becoming the kind of force power has no defense against. Number 6. When the world pulled you behind the curtain to study the outlier. The day they stopped watching you and started studying you. There comes a moment, chosen one, when your rise stops being something people casually notice and becomes something they quietly analyze. This isn't the stage where your name catches a passing glance. This is the stage where powerful minds lean back in their chairs, narrow their eyes, and start replaying your timeline like it's encrypted data they were never meant to overlook. Some people get compliments, some people get attention, but you got investigated, because when someone high up connected those 3 dots about you, your survival, your growing presence, your unshakable detachment, it didn't land like a small realization. It hit like a silent alarm that only the perceptive can hear. A pattern, a disruption, a signal disguised as a person. Understand this. Chosen one, you entered the back room of their awareness the moment they realized your story wasn't matching the script the world had written for you. Their curiosity didn't bloom out of admiration, it sparked out of confusion. You weren't supposed to rise like that. You weren't supposed to move that quietly. You weren't supposed to evolve after events that fracture most people permanently. And so, what started as observation turned into calculation. They begin tugging at the threads around your name, studying how each one leads back to a choice, a change, a transformation they didn't anticipate. Imagine them in their office late at night, screens glowing, your name highlighted on a report that shouldn't exist but does. They're not looking at your achievements. They're looking at the spaces between them, the silence you walked through, the decisions you made when nobody was clapping, the pivots you executed without warning. They're trying to understand what shaped you, what hardened you, what rewired your instincts. Not because they doubt the outcome, but because they can't trace the blueprint. You're an equation that doesn't balance, a glitch in a system that prides itself on accuracy. And while all of this unfolds behind doors you'll never walk through, you continue living your life completely unaware of the silent ripple you're causing. Yet the universe starts giving you hints. Things begin shifting. Doors that were welded shut start loosening like they were waiting for the right knock. People who never remembered you suddenly bring up your name with surprising clarity. Conversations that used to avoid you now revolve around the energy you carry. This is not coincidence. This is not random. This is not, finally my luck kicking in. This is movement created by someone with reach, someone intrigued enough to test what happens when your obstacles are quietly rearranged. You feel opportunities appearing too naturally, too smoothly, like they were placed there intentionally. You cross paths with individuals who once felt impossible to reach. Momentum gently wraps around you, pulling you into new spaces with an ease that feels unreal. And you ask yourself, why now? Why me? What changed? The truth, chosen one, is that nothing changed about you. They simply started paying attention. But let's not paint this as a fairy tale. There is always a second possibility, one stitched in shadows. Not everyone connecting dots about you is doing it with admiration. When someone with influence starts seeing your evolution as unpredictable, when your growth doesn't follow linear logic, when you start bending patterns without trying, fascination can shift into caution. Curiosity can shift into concern, and interest can shift into surveillance, because powerful people don't just observe exceptions, they assess risks. They whisper questions behind closed doors, questions you'll never hear but can always feel. Are you rising or rebelling? Are you aligned or disruptive? Are you an emerging asset or an uncontrollable variable? This is the duality of being chosen. The back room isn't just a place of recognition. It's a place of evaluation, a place where influence meets uncertainty, a place where your next move matters more than you realize. And while they watch, while they analyze, while they run simulations trying to predict your trajectory, you remain the one element they can't quantify. Because chosen one, you're no longer playing by the rules they measured you with. Your growth disrupted their charts, your evolution cracked their expectations, and your resilience broke their formula. This is what it looks like when someone high up decides you're worth observing. Deeply, quietly, strategically. But remember, being chosen means being studied, and being studied means being recognized as a force that doesn't fit neatly into their categories. And that, dear chosen one, is exactly why their obsession with you has only just begun. Number 7. The alarm you triggered, simply by becoming yourself. When your existence triggers their quiet panic, the moment you started evolving past the version of yourself they thought they understood, chosen one, something subtle but seismic shifted behind the scenes. It wasn't your words, your achievements, or your presence that set off their internal alarms. It was the simple fact that you grew in ways they didn't authorize. Empires don't panic over noise, they panic over unpredictability. Loud rebels are easy to label, monitor, and contain. But the quiet one, the one who slips out of the cage without rattling a single bar, the one who transforms in silence, out of sight and out of reach, that's the anomaly every system fears. Because once you evolve beyond their script, you're no longer manageable. You're a variable with momentum. And let's drag this deeper truth straight into the open, my chosen ones. Not everyone connecting the dots about you is planning to open doors in your favor. Some are planning to close them before you arrive. They examined your survival and saw strength they didn't approve of. They watched your presence expand and recognized a threat to the hierarchy they depend on. They observed your detachment from validation and realized they lost the last lever they could have used to control you. They didn't look at you and think, this one could be an asset. They looked at you and thought, this one might burn the entire blueprint if we're not careful. And that's when their fascination turned into quiet calculation, when curiosity hardened into evaluation of risk. Picture this. A dim boardroom, the kind where decisions ripple down into lives you'll never meet. Someone brings up your name, not with admiration, not with opportunity, but with concern. If this person keeps evolving, others will notice. If they stay unpredictable, they'll inspire disruption. If they rise any higher, our structure won't survive their shadow. They're not afraid of your ambition, they're afraid of your example. Because evolution doesn't just elevate you, it exposes the stagnation of everyone who refused to grow. Freedom doesn't just liberate you, it reveals the cages others willingly sit in. And the moment someone who was supposed to stay small suddenly outgrows their designated space, the system feels threatened, not by rebellion, but by possibility. So instead of clearing your path, they start testing your edges. Not with direct attacks, those would be too obvious. They use friction, delays, sudden obstacles, opportunities that should have been instant, but somehow get lost. Plans that crumble for no logical reason. Conversations shift without warning. People you trusted start moving strangely, as if guided by pressure they won't admit. Projects stall in the shadows. Relationships fracture like someone quietly pulled out the emotional foundation in the middle of the night. Not every attack wears teeth. Some wear timestamps, paperwork, excuses, and bad timing. Some arrive as silent resistance, not loud sabotage. And you feel it, all of it. That invisible drag that makes life feel like uphill gravel. That mysterious heaviness in the air. That pressure that sits on your progress like an unseen hand trying to anchor you in place. And naturally, you start to wonder, why did everything get harder the moment I started becoming myself? Here's the answer, chosen one. Because this phase is designed to expose the difference between those who are merely improving and those who are truly ascending. Most people fold here. They dim their light to dodge attention. They shrink to fit the expectations of those watching. They step back into the version of themselves the system feels comfortable managing. They trade evolution for acceptance. But you weren't built for compliance. You weren't shaped for shrinking. You don't break the way others break. You sharpen. Pressure doesn't collapse you. It clarifies you. Resistance doesn't stop you. It sculpts you. And that, my chosen one, is exactly what they underestimated. They thought the friction would discourage you. They thought the tests would exhaust you. They thought the subtle sabotage would make you retreat. But instead, every attempt to restrain you only revealed how impossible you are to contain. You're not most people, and that's the part they never planned for. You're not motivated by approval. You're not silenced by doubt. You're not slowed by shadows. What scares them isn't what you've done, it's what your existence proves is now possible. You set off their alarm system simply by outgrowing your old cage. And now they're forced to face a truth they never wanted to confront. Once a chosen one evolves past containment, there is no going back, and there is no stopping what comes next. Number 8. How pressure forged you into something they can't contain. The part where their pressure forged your edge. And chosen one, let's not sugarcoat it. You weren't shaped in peace, you were engineered in impact. Some people crumble when life leans on them. You became the kind of person pressure stops trying to break because it realizes you absorb it, repurpose it, and turn it into something lethal. Every time resistance slammed into you, you didn't splinter. You recalibrated. You adjusted your shoulders, steadied your breath, and walked through the hit like the world was teaching you a language only the chosen ever bother learning. You didn't crack under pressure, you introduced yourself. You've been tested in ways most people never will. Doors that should have opened stayed locked. Opportunities that were promised evaporated. People who swore they'd stand with you disappeared the moment standing got heavy. Projects stalled, plans collapsed. Timing betrayed you. Life kept throwing walls at you like it was trying to prove a point. But instead of shrinking, instead of retreating, you built your own momentum inside the very barriers meant to stop you. You didn't crawl around the obstacle, you went straight through it, leaving a shape in the debris that looks suspiciously like someone who refuses to be denied. This is why they stare at you now with that unsettled confusion. They cannot figure out whether you're unstoppable or simply too unbothered to acknowledge resistance. And the truth, chosen one, is that you're both. You move like someone who already accepted that pressure is unavoidable, so instead of fearing it, you befriended it. You made it part of your identity. You carry pressure the way some people carry ego, not as a burden, but as proof of who you've become. Let me tell you something they hope you never realize. Resistance isn't rejection, it's recognition. When the world throws friction your way, it's not saying stop. It's whispering, you're close. Pressure only pushes back on objects that are actually moving. You don't feel the weight of the mountain until you start climbing it. The chosen ones are the only ones who understand that the mountain tilts forward on purpose. It's not trying to knock you down. It's testing if you're worthy of the view. Imagine this. You're climbing, breath steady, hands gripped tight, legs burning. Most people would turn around the moment the slope shifts against them. But you, my chosen one, you lean into it. You climb harder. Because some part of you knows what average minds never understand. Easy paths don't build extraordinary people. Smooth roads don't create outliers. Comfort never shaped a disruptor. Legends are not formed in rooms with soft lighting and calm music. They're carved in collision, refined in friction, sharpened by everything that should have broken them but didn't. That's what terrifies them. Not that you faced pressure, but that pressure activated you. Whether someone high up tried to open doors for you or tried to shut them hasn't mattered for a long time, because both reactions, support and sabotage, push you in the same direction, forward. Assistance sharpens your skills, resistance sharpens your edge. Either way you grow, either way you evolve, either way they lose control. And here's where things get interesting. The more people watched you, the more unstoppable you became. Observation, whether admiration or hostility, forced you to become aware of your own potential. And awareness, chosen one, is the beginning of mastery. Mastery becomes momentum. Momentum becomes inevitability. You are becoming the kind of force that no system, no person, no circumstance can contain. They kept waiting for you to break so they could neatly file you under predictable, but every time they pushed, you became more undeniable than the version before. This is why they're rattled, because you're not defying odds anymore, you're rewriting them, you're not surviving pressure, you're feeding off it. And at this point, chosen one, even resistance can't slow you down. It can only witness what it accidentally helped activate. Number 9, the threshold. You crossed that erased every way back. The threshold you cross that they can never drag you back from. There comes a moment in every chosen one's rise when the ground behind them dissolves. Not metaphorically, literally, in the sense that even if you wanted to return to the old version of yourself, the path no longer exists. That is the point of no return they never planned for. They never imagined you would reach the stage where your presence becomes something they can't undo, can't dilute, can't rewrite. Once they've witnessed your storm, your resilience, your clarity, your evolution, there's no way for you to disappear quietly again. They saw too much. You became too visible, too undeniable, too rewritten from the inside out. And here's the truth that snaps the final chain. You can't go back now, even if nostalgia whispers, even if comfort tempts, even if old wounds ache. The version of you who tolerated being overlooked, underestimated, and treated like background noise doesn't exist anymore. They thought you'd stay in that role forever. They counted on your silence, they bet on your doubt. But the moment those 3 dots aligned, your evolution, your presence, your self-mastery, the doorway behind you slammed shut. Not slowly, not politely. It welded itself closed, like the world finally decided that your era of smallness had expired. You're on the radar now, chosen one. Not because you asked to be, not because you forced your way into the room, but because your transformation made noise even your silence couldn't hide. You became too sharp to ignore, too focused to overlook, too steady to dismiss. And you know what that means? You don't get to shrink again. You don't get to pretend you're average. You don't get to crawl back into the role that made everyone else comfortable while suffocating you. That version of you was a temporary costume, and it fell off the moment your truth outgrew it. There are no refunds on this kind of evolution. There is no return policy on growth this deep. Imagine it, a spotlight swinging toward you not because you begged for attention, but because your existence outgrew the shadows. Something about the way you moved, quiet, intentional, unbothered, made someone high up pause and say, "This one is different." They didn't see the mask you wore or the scars you hid. They saw the survivor who didn't just heal, but sharpened. They saw the presence that entered rooms before you physically did. They saw the detachment that wasn't coldness, but completion, the type of self-mastery that whispers, "I don't need permission to be who I am anymore." That's when you became a subject of study, the outlier in their data, the exception that ruins every rule, the narrative glitch that exposes flaws in the system they trusted. You became the person they analyze behind closed doors, the force they try to categorize but can't. Because your rise isn't formulaic, it isn't predictable, it isn't something they can replicate or contain. It is uniquely, dangerously yours. And once someone with status and influence notices that kind of anomaly, the world shifts around you whether you're prepared or not. Now there is only one direction left: forward. Forward into the version of yourself they saw before you fully recognized it. Forward into the power they hoped you would keep dimmed. Forward into the evolution they never expected you to survive long enough to activate. This isn't a phase. This isn't a moment. This is your new baseline. The foundation you stand on now is built from every collapse you rose out of. And here's what rattles them down to their core. If someone with reach, insight, and authority is obsessed with your trajectory, it means you've already stepped into a category the world doesn't have a label for. You became living proof that limits can be broken, that systems are not airtight. That transformation doesn't require permission slips. You are their fear realized. The evidence that a person can rise from ruin with more precision, more fire, and more direction than before. You're not just built differently, chosen one. You are the confirmation of everything they prayed would never take shape. You're the outcome they never planned for, the answer they didn't want, the evolution they can't reverse. And now that you've crossed this threshold, there is no going back. Only up, only forward, only deeper into the power that made them watch you in the first place. And now, chosen ones, as we close this chapter and step into the next, understand this. Once your rise begins, it doesn't slow down, it compounds. You're walking a path that reshapes itself beneath your feet, and the world is adjusting to the force you've become. If this message hit something real inside you, show your support and keep this energy alive. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and drop 77 in the comments to signal that you're embracing your evolution fully. Share this with another rising one. You never know whose ignition you might spark next.